Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming and spending a rainy Thursday evening with us. I'm Representative Natalie Price. I represent most of Birmingham, most of Royal Oak, all of Berkeley, all of Huntington Woods, and then little bits of Southfield, Bloomfield Township, and Beverly Hills. Um, I do these monthly community conversations out in the communities, rotating roughly between Birmingham, Royal Oak, and then Berkeley, Huntington Woods. Again, the bigger areas. But of course, all of my constituents are welcome at any of the community conversations. And even people who aren't constituents are always welcome, especially if the topic is something that impacts you. So tonight we are focusing specifically on the topic of noise out on Woodward, on our beloved state highway nearby. And I wanted to have a community conversation focused on this issue specifically because it is the #1 issue that we hear about in my office. So in Lansing, I'm there 3 days a week. If I see I'm a little tired and frazzled, I came directly here from Lansing today. I was started my day at 8:30 a.m. getting a photo shoot with the governor for bills that I got done last term. And it's been a very long day. And I feel energized showing up here in my community, talking about something that I know is really important to a lot of my constituents. But again, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm the state rep. I live in Berkeley. I was on Berkeley City Council before becoming a state rep, so I do appreciate the challenges that our municipal officials have, and grateful to see a few of them out in the audience with us today too. I also want to introduce my staff. So Cass Creech is my legislative director. He's done a lot of work on the vehicle code update that I'll be talking about, which is my legislative partial fix to the noise on Woodward. And then Alima Tusar is also in my office. She does constituent services. So emails, phone calls, newsletter, social media posts, right? She is, and my schedule. She has a very packed full-time job, as both of them do. But again, legislative and constituent work, that's it. These are my 2 full-time staff members. So I asked today for us to focus on this issue of noise. We are going to be using this app, which is a web-based app, so you will not need to download anything on your phone. But you'll see sitting out, sprinkled through the audience, these QR codes. If you use your phone, the camera on your phone, on the QR code, it will take you to a web-based app where it will say our community conversation, and in that you can put your questions. You can also upvote questions. So if you see somebody else asked a question that you are hoping will get asked, give it a like to increase the likelihood that it will be asked. And even though we don't have a huge crowd, and I'm hopeful we'll have time to answer all of your questions, there are some folks on Zoom, and that will be a helpful way for them to also know what other questions are being asked and be able to participate in the process of our discussion tonight. So those are the basics for me. I'm going to pass along the mic and ask my other guests to introduce themselves. We might also have another guest trickling in. And if you could just share who you are, who you come from, and what brings you out to talk about noise on Woodward. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lori Swanson. I'm the Oakland Transportation Service Center manager for the Michigan Department of Transportation. And we get asked this question a lot, is what can we do about noise? And although MDOT doesn't have a whole lot to do with how a car is made or whatever, we do have obviously jurisdiction over the road itself and pavement and that sort of thing. So from that aspect, that's why I'm here.
Good evening. I'm Chief Scott Grewe with the Birmingham Police Department. I'm here basically because, well, we have Woodward and we enforce traffic on Woodward, and it's been obviously a complaint on noise and traffic. I can tell you that I've worked very closely with Natalie Price's office over the last probably year and a half now, looking at our state laws and how they affect vehicle noise and exhaust noise from a vehicle, and what it provides to our officers for enforcement. Not only enforcement, but also what those penalties are. Currently, under the state law, if we were to write a vehicle ticket for an exhaust issue, it's a $100 fine. It carries no points, and there's no escalating factor to that for multiple offenses. it's not much of a deterrent for someone that's spending hundreds of thousands, I don't say thousands, hundreds of dollars to modify their exhaust systems for the sole purposes of being loud. What we're finding is most cars that we write those tickets to, they're just paying the fine and there's no changes to the car. So what we proposed and work with Rep. Price's office is not only a change in the statute and how we can enforce it, but also a caveat to that, which allows them to fix their vehicle so that there's no fine. So we're hoping to get them to return their car back to factory specs, so it's no longer a nuisance. And if not, then it's a higher fine to hopefully deter that type of behavior. And also there's some escalating factors to that if it continues. So those are some of the things that we've worked with her office to get that language together. And that's part of the proposal that she referenced, and probably have some more discussion on here tonight. Thank you.
Yes, and I'll try and do a medium length summary of that bill. This is my proposed update to the vehicle code, House Bill 5696?
From last year.
From last year. I did get the number right, though.
Yes.
I'm very proud. But number is not, I can tell you all about the language. I was an English major and an English teacher before having kids and becoming a state rep. Numbers are not my thing, but I have a great team. We work together well. So House Bill 5696, I introduced it last term. When Democrats, I am a Democrat, this is a strong Dem seat, Democrats had control of the House and the Senate and the governor's office, and strategically it made sense for me to have one bill and to introduce it and to work it through the process, and I got it as far along as I could. I'm proud of the progress that we made. It did not get out of the House yet. I will be reintroducing it this year with a slightly different strategy since we have Republican control of the House. I have identified and have enthusiasm from a Republican colleague, and I am just making sure that he and his staff are prepared to do the level of work and kind of work that's going to be needed to get this, as far along as we can, hopefully out of the House, out of the Senate, and signed by the governor. But what is this bill? We're breaking it into two bills so that both of us can have our names on it. Again, I am a Democrat, and we have Democratic control of the Senate and the governor, so it will be helpful to have a Democrat on the package. It's also important to me to have my name on the package because as the bills work through the process, there are often proposed amendments coming from opposition, and having my name on it will require those amendments to be run by me so that I can negotiate and make sure that the amendments don't derail the bill and that all of the intent and the goals, working with our stakeholders like Chief Grewe and the other chiefs, that the bills are doing what we need them to do. So we're breaking the bill into two. That's common. It's not a big deal. It will just mean that two people, a Republican and a Democrat, will have their names and be responsible and have the impetus to work together to get them through the process. Other than breaking them into two, the content is the same as last term. So House Bill 5696 is a proposed update to the vehicle code. Like Chief Grewe said, we are proposing increasing the penalties for modified vehicles. So if the vehicle was not modified, it will continue to be the $100 fine. It will also become waivable, right? A fix-it ticket, that if you spend the $100 getting your vehicle fixed, then it can be waived if that is done before the court date. If your vehicle has been intentionally modified, we're proposing $500 for the first offense, also waivable if you use that money to bring your vehicle back into compliance. $1,000 for the second offense, waivable down to $500. If you use $500 to fix your vehicle, then it can get waived down. So we're really trying to encourage personal responsibility. We would love for nobody to have to pay anything, just stop intentionally modifying your vehicles. Which I also want to say, it is currently against the law in Michigan to modify your vehicle in order for it to make excessive noise. So another important thing is we're not making anything newly illegal. It is currently illegal. I'm actually going to ask Chief Grewe, because again, I'm tired and I don't want to talk the whole time, and he'll do a better job than me, to explain why, even though it's illegal in Michigan to modify your vehicle, why it is very challenging for our local officers to enforce that out on Woodward. So, prompt you to answer that one. Thank you.
So some of the issues we've dealt with enforcement is using a decibel meter to register the vehicle's noise. As you all are familiar with Woodward, I'm sure, there's a lot of vehicles, there's a lot of buildings nearby, there's a lot of other sounds. So in order for us to go into a court and be able to testify that we know specifically it was that vehicle that was making that sound at that time, that's extremely difficult. It also requires a certain distance from the vehicle to do that measuring of that. And most of Woodward does not provide that amount of space. For instance, when you're closer to 14 Mile, as close as some of those buildings are to the road, we would essentially have to be on the other side of the road. So for instance, if I'm measuring a vehicle that's going northbound, I would have to be in the parking of the southbound side. That would give me about the distance I would need to use this device, which then provides me no ability to really get out and go after that vehicle. Unless we start doing enforcement where we're talking about teams of officers, where someone's sitting with a device and other officers are in an area to pull those vehicles over. So it becomes a challenge for us if those tickets get contested. We have written some of those tickets based on the alteration to the vehicle alone, not necessarily a DBA level. And those tickets, we have found that nobody's fighting those tickets. They're all getting paid at court simply because it's a $100 fine. There's no points, no nothing to it. So it's certainly not providing a deterrence, and it's certainly not getting anybody to change their vehicle back that we've seen. So that's why we're looking for a lot of these changes. But that's some of the enforcement problems, and that's some of the issues that we could see in court if they were to be disputed in court because of how you have to use the sound meter device, which is why the tickets have been written more for the actual modifications than the actual sound.
Thank you. And there's the challenge of the current vehicle code. Even though it says very clearly at the beginning that you cannot modify your vehicle to make excessive noise, later on in the code it refers to specific decibel levels, saying that you can't modify your vehicle in order to make noise above specific decibel levels. And with the meters not being designed to be used in an environment with other vehicles and buildings like we have on Woodward, makes it very hard to enforce. It's also worth noting, and again, I see some of your commission members here, that they can't enforce any local ordinances on Woodward because Woodward is a state highway. So that is, the city of Birmingham, the city of Royal Oak, they can have local noise ordinances that could be enforced on their local roads, but not on Woodward. One other thing I wanted to say about the decibel levels is we are not changing the decibel levels. So currently in the vehicle code, there are specific allowable decibel levels for our vehicles. Those are designed to be measured with those types of meters in controlled environments. The manufacturers, the dealerships, right, they have to conform to those, and we're not changing those. It is currently legal for a motorcycle to be louder than a car, for instance, for safety reasons. We're not changing it. What we are changing is saying that if you are intentionally modifying your vehicle to make excessive noise above and beyond the allowed decibel level, that again is measured and determined and at the manufacturer level, that's where we want to increase the penalty and give the ability for that to be enforced on our state highways like Woodward. Okay, did I miss any essential parts of the vehicle code update that I should lay as groundwork before we start taking questions?
There's also a penalty for shops that help people make those modifications.
Right.
As like a small
Right.
portion.
That is a question that we often get.
Yep.
Is it illegal for shops to be making those modifications? And yes, and that is also addressed in the bill. Yeah. Sure, please.
So just to give everybody a little update on what we've done here in Birmingham in terms of dealing with the Woodward issue, we've been, ever since COVID really, is when we saw a huge uptick in this type of behavior and traffic on Woodward. And we've been, since then, assigning dedicated officers to Woodward to enforce traffic. And it's all forms of traffic. It's not just noise, but it's any type of traffic violation, any type of city ordinance violation that we can find along parking areas and that kind of stuff to try to deter that type of behavior. We really didn't see a big change in activity out there until this last year, where if you're familiar with the area, we removed a lot of parking in the area. We changed the parking restrictions along the service drives along Woodward, as well as we worked with all the private businesses along Woodward to get power of attorney over their parking lots as most of them were dealing with issues as well when they'd come in on a Monday morning and there's trash and stuff in their lot, because people are using it as a hangout and they didn't want them there, right? So, but we had no authority to go in and move them off of private property. We worked with almost all the private property owners along Woodward to get that power of attorney so that we can remove people from their property. Towards the middle of the summer, towards the tail end for sure, we started to see a big difference in the number of people here in Birmingham. Once we pushed some of those crowds out of town a little bit, I think we saw that activity decline. I think we also saw a little bit in the noise reduction. Part of the philosophy of moving the parking and the people congregating was, you know as well as I do, if there's someone on the side of the road, they're showing off for those people, right? So we were hoping to remove that situation so that people aren't driving by and revving their engines and squealing their tires to show off for those crowds along the road. So we certainly saw a difference in the amount of activity once we did that. And when I'd say even this spring, as soon as it was warm and the snow melted, we start seeing that activity out there. But it's been slower this year. In talking to my officers and the activity that they're seeing out there on Friday and Saturday nights, it's a decline from the previous year a little bit. And there's some thought to that it's because they know there's nowhere to stop and hang out in Birmingham. We've also seen on some social media posts where these car clubs are postings for hangouts, that a few of them now are trying to tell each other to stay off of Woodward because of the tickets and the enforcement that's going on. And some of them are talking about going back to Gratiot and going back over that area as a new hangout. So I think our enforcement activity, our message, our parking restrictions is working. It's going in a positive direction at this point. I can tell you that based on the number of complaints I normally get, I'm getting fewer complaints this year than I've ever gotten in the past. I think a lot of it probably does play with weather. We certainly see that once we get some nice weather, it's typically when we see complaints, and I think that's for two reasons. Certainly there's maybe a little bit of increase in activity, but it's more usually on account of the fact that people are outside. When the weather gets nice, windows open up, doors open up, and you can hear that a lot more often. As soon as it gets hot outside, people turn on their air conditioning and close windows, we see less complaints. You can almost base it on the weather that, when it's that nice temperature that people have their windows open is when we get most of our complaints. But this year we really haven't seen a lot, so that's a good sign. Our enforcement is continuing. We're not dropping off anything at this point based on activity, but we're going to continue moving forward with what we have right now. Just to throw some numbers at you, last year, just our dedicated patrols on Woodward wrote 6,000 tickets on Woodward alone because of our enforcement activity. And this year to date, we're at just over 1,000 tickets that our officers have written on Woodward in Birmingham just to target this type of activity. So it's having a positive effect. We are seeing a slight change in the amount of activity. So that's good. It's a good sign for now.
Thank you for recognizing this. This issue, noise on Woodward, is much bigger than just what we're doing at the vehicle code update. And I guess, Lori, this would be a great time for you, too, to speak from MDOT on what are the factors that you consider related to noise in our region, on our highways. And if you could share a little bit about the survey that you've been doing in the Woodward corridor. I think there are people who came here to hear about that, too.
Sure. Well, MDOT really doesn't have any jurisdiction to do anything that would affect your job as far as enforcement. We rely on that mostly for any noise issues. However, the pavement service can always have an impact on noise. Right now, we are in the process of just holding Woodward together as far as doing skip patching and joint repairs, different things we call capital preventative maintenance type of fixes. We're waiting for the new study to come out, which we're in the process of evaluating Woodward basically from the river in Detroit all the way through Pontiac. And we're looking for, cohesive types of changes that the communities want to make, that MDOT is interested in making along the entire corridor. There's a lot of different, I would say, like north of 696 has a lot more traffic than south of 696. Lots of different pockets like that. The city of Detroit has a different traffic volume than we have up here. north of Birmingham has a different volume than, in the Royal Oak area. So there's a lot of different factors that go into what we're doing, and we're looking for community input. We've had public meetings where people have come out, and our consultants have it was like a charrette. They had big, long plans, and they were just looking for people to put marks and write little notes, and like they'd like to see more bike lanes. They would like to see rapid transit. They would, different things, anything and everything that was interesting or what people could use in their daily life to make it easier to get around. And so last week we had a meeting with the local stakeholders, and we're looking at each community and what were their top two things they were looking for. It could be do nothing. It could be, and some of them were very interested in having a dedicated transit lane, and then more facilities for pedestrians and bikes. So we've asked everyone to the different communities to give us their final two by July. And then we will be finalizing the report. I'm not exactly sure when it will be out, or at least a draft will be out, but there will be more community involvement as far as presenting our final ideas. And then once we have it done, that's going to be the roadmap for MDOT to start breaking it up into different chunks to program funding so that we can make these actual projects and build them and start, I'm not sure if we would start north to south, south to north, in the middle, and work both ways. I don't know. We don't have that yet. But it's, going to be a lot of money, and it's going to be over a number of years. But the idea is to listen to the communities, see what is important to them. I know Birmingham would like to slow traffic down. They would like a road diet. They would like a bunch of things like that. And, maybe it will work, maybe it won't, but the study will give us that roadmap on what will work and how we balance moving traffic through as along with what each community needs for their residents.
Where can people follow along and be updated with the process? Where would you send them to?
Well, we have a planning department out of our region office who's actually heading up that project. We don't have a website or anything for it, but we do put out press releases and that sort of thing whenever we have a public meeting or whatever. So, we could work through your office, and I could let you know what is available and maybe link it to your website or whatever works.
Thank you for that. And speaking of my office, we do send out newsletters once a month, and you can sign up for those. And we'll get Alima to coordinate so we make sure that we have those dates and info and are able to send that out proactively as well. Okay, so questions. So looking at the app, what question should we start with? Do you want to call in a person or?
Oh.
Good to know.
Shoot. Well, honestly, there are few enough of us in this room that I think if you all are comfortable with it, if you want to line up or raise your hand if you'd prefer not to get up, I think that'll be okay.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for letting me know.
We do have one question on Zoom, if you all would be okay with us asking that one first.
Sure. You want to use the mic?
Sure. Okay, so David Lurie on Zoom is asking who's holding up the bill.
Good question. And there's always a complicated answer to why bills aren't done as soon as we want them to be, which is yesterday. So this bill has proven controversial both with Democrats and Republicans in the House. So I'm not going to blame one party or the other. I think the biggest challenge for me as the representative who is taking this on and trying to do the work is trying to translate to people who don't live in this part of the state how important this is and how this is impacting, which is why your stories help. I have shared stories, and we do have a survey from our office where we're collecting stories. I've shared them with my colleagues. I've shared them with MDOT and with other people who, from the executive office and the departments, have a role to play. But right now, it's trying to, the next step is get it out of the House. My colleagues that live in more rural areas, when I talk to them about this bill, one of the reactions that I get is, well, this is, one extreme reaction that I've had more than once is, well, I modify my vehicle, right? And I don't want to be part of a bill that would make it illegal for me to do what I do. And I tell them, well, it is already illegal for you to do that. But what I'm trying, in the areas where they live, in very rural areas, is very spread out, right? People can modify their vehicles to make excessive noise and not impact their neighbors. And like we know who live in this area, that is just not possible to do around here. See the impacts, we feel the impacts, we see property values going down because of excessive noise on this nearby highway. We have people who are trying to heal, hospice, need sleep for their jobs to function like we all do, unable to get it. This impacts health. With some of these modifications that sound like gunshots going by, we know that kind of stress, that adrenaline spike, harms people, harms the lining around our hearts. I can go on and on. Again, and a lot of these are stories that you have shared, research that my constituents have helped me realize why we need to make this a priority. And a big part of it is going to my colleagues who don't live in an area like mine and try and explain how important it is. There's also always the concern that when we talk about increasing enforcement on something, that we know that people of color are enforced upon more than people who aren't. There's a real concern about racial profiling. And I've had a lot of tough conversations with some of my colleagues who are concerned about that, especially because some laws that we did early on in my first term related to distracted driving had some studies that came out that showed how disproportionately people of color were enforced against. So there's some education on those. One of the things that I point out to my colleagues who raise that issue is that the departments who reported back numbers on that were big urban departments, which also have urban populations. That's not to say that I don't think racial profiling exists. We live in a flawed society and it does exist. So it is something to consider. But another thing that also I encourage my colleagues to consider is that people in urban and Black and brown communities are also disproportionately impacted by vehicles that have been modified to make excessive noise. Right? Chief Grewe talked about in Birmingham, you get the most complaints when the windows are open. Well, in some of our nearby communities, they don't have air conditioning and have the ability to close their windows for their kids and their seniors to be able to sleep at night. So we do know that there are studies that show that excessive noise on state highways and areas like Woodward are disproportionately hurting people of color as well. So that's some of the who's holding it back. It's complicated. It's requiring a lot of me getting to know and build trust and relationship with my colleagues and being able to, again, take your stories and take the research and make a case of why this is important to do, not just for this community, but for Gratiot and for other communities around our state. Okay.
Question about working with Mallory too. You just want to quickly.
Oh, yeah, there's a question about working with Senator McMurrow's. Senator McMurrow's fantastic on this issue. She's very supportive of my bills. She has some other things in the works related to this, which I've also been supportive. Chief Grewe, do you know specifically what she's doing this term on it? Okay. We will get back to you with more details. But last term, we took slightly different approaches, and we were very supportive of each other's approaches. Again, I do not claim that my vehicle code update is going to solve all issues of noise on Woodward. It is a complex issue, and we are supportive of each other's work, taking slightly different approaches. Yeah. Yeah, please.
So I want to add two things. Is we did work with Senator McMorrow's office pretty closely initially, and then Representative Price really went with the ground running on this. So I think my conversations with Senator McMorrow, she kind of took a little bit of a back step to it, but initially she had a lot of ideas and plans. We had a lot of meetings going on, and then I know she was very supportive of you. But the one thing I wanted to add about some of the hiccups that you mentioned too is there were some concerns that we received as well that this new statute would be targeting people who maybe couldn't afford to fix their vehicles. And that's certainly not the case. And I just want to be clear that there's already a law on the books that says that you have to have a working exhaust system. This statute is going after people who purposely, intentionally modify their exhaust. So the person who has a vehicle that maybe is older or rusting out and has a hole in the exhaust, this wouldn't apply to that because this is about absolute modifications. The law that already exists covers having a working exhaust. So, which is a statute that, quite frankly, I don't know that I've ever seen written because people are understanding of the fact that, they may have some needs and have some issues trying to get their car fixed. So just want to be clear that that's not what the target. So.
I did have another chief in another community joke, but his intention was interesting and appreciated too. He said, "We will be profiling. It will be wealthy white men between the ages of 18 and 24 who are by far the biggest culprits of this offense in our communities." So anyway, I appreciated the intent of his addressing my concern.
Nope.
Thank you so much for sharing that, sharing your perspective again, hearing those stories and being able to go back and share them with my colleagues who are resistant to this is very helpful. Sometimes I'll hear people say like, why would you move so close to Woodward if you didn't like the noise? And a few responses that I have to that. Number one, not everybody moves during the window of time when this is an issue. We also know that this issue has gotten a lot worse within the past 5 years. Chief Grewe taught me about this, that the ease and accessibility of getting these modified parts on Amazon, having them shipped overnight or 2-day delivery to your home and being able to install them in your garage, that's a relatively new phenomenon. And just again, the culture, the shift, this problem has gotten a lot worse recently. There's no doubt of that. Maybe with a slight exception compared to last year. Last year may have been worse than this year, but the trend in the last 5 years is worse. There's also the fact that this excessive noise impacts property values. Not everybody, of course, has the ability to move, obviously. And when your property values go down, it also limits your ability to move. I have had constituents tell me that they moved because of noise on Woodward if they had that ability, but it was hard. And there are people who have also told me that they didn't move to our area because they were aware of how much of an issue this is. So there's no question that it's harming our community. So thank you for sharing. Yeah, please.
Real quick though, I thank you for sharing that, and I think it's a very important what you had to say, particularly to the point where you mentioned speaking with your other representatives that maybe in areas that don't deal with what we deal with. To your point, I mean, while Woodward certainly is exasperated, right? It's a cruising destination. This is not just a local problem; it is a statewide problem. I myself have been in other towns, other communities, and trying to have a nice dinner somewhere, and you're disrupted by this type of noise issue. So I appreciate you bringing up the fact that, what you're dealing with at home, but also recognizing that it is a statewide issue and it is a bigger concern. And hopefully these type of comments to your colleagues there can help push this bill forward.
Thank you. The recording that you shared also reminded me of a recording that I received from a police chief. And was it you, Chief Grewe? Your team sent me recordings from your body cams where your officers had to. Can you explain that recording that you sent to our office as well?
Yeah, we had an incident, I think it was last year, 2 officers trying to speak with an individual. We got called out on I don't even remember what it was off the top of my head, but they were called out along Woodward to deal with a situation. And because of the noise, they had to go around behind the building to be able to have a conversation with the person they were dealing with. So in the body cam footage, it was hard to even hear what the officers were saying. And I sent that to her as an example to use to try to help push this bill forward as well. So.
I'm not sure. Maybe make sure it's on. I might just repeat the question too in case the people at home can't hear it.
Okay. One question was, are there any points attached in your bill? You mentioned that it's incremental.
Incremental penalties, but no points.
Points are typically for moving violations, so this would be an equipment violation.
Do you want to say that again, just again for the people at home?
So points are typically only associated to moving violations. So, for instance, prohibited turns, speeding, that kind of stuff. When we write a vehicle or write an owner of a vehicle a ticket that has an equipment or it's an equipment issue, whether it maybe be a headlight out or an exhaust not working, that's equipment. It's not a driving infraction. Typically, those don't carry points. Yes. Yeah.
With the cars that are left.
So I would say the vast majority of the tickets we write on Woodward are not speeding tickets. Due to the volume of cars, we don't get a whole lot of speeders on Woodward. Most of the tickets that are here are probably for some type of other violation, whether it be an equipment violation, prohibited turn, maybe a red light violation, whatever it may be. But when we get into points are assigned by the Secretary of State for driving behaviors, not equipment on the car. So that's where your points come from.
Okay, and that now leads to my highway. I don't know in Birmingham for over 50 years. I lived 2.5 blocks with a huge Templeton Park in the way, and you could tell your colleagues, your constituents who don't understand that imagine living in a home that you dreamed of in a neighborhood where you do the regular. Because I don't think, but I think Cruise was brought back in. It did reinvigorate this whole thing. And we're just so extremely frustrated, and I don't think the air conditioning versus the non-air conditioning is even a legitimate issue, because I have air conditioning, but I want to see. So, I'll stop there.
Thank you.
For the work you are doing. We appreciate it, we do. I'm not out there at midnight, I'm not in there listening.
And that point of being able to hear it even over the air conditioning is well made, and I absolutely believe it. Personally, I live about a mile away from Woodward, and I can hear it, and it's disruptive to me and my family. So I do believe the problem, and again, I'm just trying to figure out how to best do right by the community and get this legislation as far as it can, because it's one part of a solution toward addressing noise on Woodward. So, yeah, so the state highway, I know that's confusing. Like, when I said that we can't enforce a local ordinance, it's not that the local officers can't enforce the laws. They do, and they can, and they just cannot enforce local laws on the state highway. So there are officers out there enforcing all of the related state laws and the current vehicle code and all of those things. They just don't have a tool of an enforceable vehicle code to be able to enforce this. I'm probably not. Do you want to address that a little bit, Chief Grewe? Yeah.
Could you talk about how many tickets you've written that got thrown out?
Yeah, so real quick on a couple things. So to go for the state law versus local ordinance, there were a couple agencies that tried to go to local ordinance route. There was two specifically that wrote quite a few tickets under a local noise ordinance, and all those tickets were dismissed by the court. The reason that is the state law supersedes any local ordinance, and the state law already covers the legal noise limit for mufflers and exhaust. So you can't create an ordinance to supersede state law. That's just the way the laws work. Secondly, and when it comes down to enforcement, if you go out there on a Friday or Saturday night and you drive up and down Woodward, I think you're going to see a lot of police cars. Matter of fact, most people I talk to are shocked by the number of police cars that are out there. So I don't think it's necessarily an issue where we need to say get the state involved or get the county involved. Certainly, we encourage it, and we'd ask for them to be there as much as they want. We'd love to see additional police officers out there. We've asked. We've told them that please, if you make this part of your regular patrols. I want to say it was maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, we asked the county to step up their patrols out there. They started assigning some cars. But I don't think that's an issue. I think between the cars that we're putting out there, Royal Oak, Bloomfield Hills, Pleasant Ridge, I mean, if you drive up and down the stretch of Woodward, you're going to see police everywhere. You really are. I think they're very visible. I encourage my officers to make sure that their traffic stops are on Woodward, so the lights are seen by everybody. And not only that, it congests traffic a little bit, right? It slows everybody down because they're there and people have to go around them. So If you watch and go out there, I think you'd be surprised on the number of vehicles. But to that point, we have told the county, we've told the state police, yeah, we'd love to see you guys out here more, so.
Question that might help.
So, Chief Grewe, and also you. So my understanding is that even if we did have the state police enforcing on Woodward, the law as it's written still requires that they measure the decibel level of the modification. So the entire point of Rep. Price's bill is to remove the necessity of measuring the decibel level altogether. And so then it won't matter if it's the county sheriff, the state police, Chief Grewe, or any other person who can enforce the law. Once that's removed, they won't have to measure the decibels anymore, and that will allow them to enforce the law as it was intended to be enforced.
That's why we brought the policy director with us. Yeah, thank you, Cass. Good point. Yeah.
And 19-year-old kids coming off rate. There are things we can do. Lights, like there's a light right there. If that was just green at a certain hour, or perhaps programmed if somebody needs to walk across the crosswalk, then be triggered. Because when it goes red, that gives everyone an opportunity to go out. You know, like, I just believe there are digestible things that we can do. So I'll stop.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And those specifics, again, those stories about the veterans who are obviously impacted by those startling sounds even more than most, or with health concerns. None of us should be startled in the middle of the night, but that will impact some people more than others. I did a tour of the Birmingham schools during March for March's Reading Month. I think I went to 5 elementary schools in the area, and usually 4 or 5 classrooms each day. And at every one, I shared this legislation. This legislation is one that the kids can relate to. And I asked the kids, like, how many of you have been woken up in the middle of the night by a loud car? Every single hand. And they knew it. They know this issue. They know it is impacting them and their families, and they like to hear that I want to do something about it. I know how important this is for our community, and I'm going to keep working on it. In terms, yeah, So again, like our current vehicle code gives specific decibel levels, and I am not trying to change those. That will be essential for me being able to get this legislation done. It's not that I wouldn't consider working on something else eventually. This is the solution that I'm able to invest the time and energy. It has the support from the sheriffs and the police chiefs, and it's what I feel like I can do right now. But if I get this done, right, then we can talk about what next step I can work on to try to help address the issue. Is there anything else you want to say about that or the peeling out? That's also something I'm not super familiar with. Yeah.
So real quick on the squealing of the tires, I mean, that's illegal. So we write those tickets a lot. That's an easy one for us to write. In terms of what you're talking about with the cars coming from the manufacturers, I'm not sure if everybody's aware, but a lot of your newer sports cars now have the select exhaust system right in the dash, right? They can change from like normal mode to sport mode or whatever it is right in the exhaust. So they're rolling off the factory line with the ability to be above the decimal level that would be legal. The reason the dealerships right now are able to do that is because they can select a normal mode and it's within the law, right? It would be a heck of a legal battle, I think, to go after one of the automakers to say that you're producing a car that is in violation of the state law, because their argument is going to be, well, it's not if you select this button, right? The driver has to select it themselves to be illegal. We make it so it's not. So that's a very interesting legal argument down the road, and finding someone to take on the auto industry on that one would be interesting. But yeah, I'm with you. I understand. And to that point, I would say that the vehicles that are creating most of the problem and the nuisance are not those vehicles. Now, let me take it back. It may be those vehicles, but it's not that button that select exhaust. It's that with the modification. They're not the ones that you're going to hear from a mile away. They're not the ones typically you're going to be making the popping and the cracking, right? Those are probably that button, that sport button, plus the modifications, right? So with the modifications in the state law, I think we can still address a lot of those vehicles. I think the selection of that sport exhaust would probably make it above the decibel level, which then we could write those tickets once that's easier to enforce. But I still believe the ones are the nuisance ones are going to be still having the modifications that we can deal with the new statute.
And hold it close and speak loudly.
I won't say what Lori said. It is annoying to put it mildly, disruptive. I hear the impediments. State highway. We in Birmingham can't enforce our own rules. Two questions. Is it a feasibility? Is it feasible to make it not as good? It does work legally. If I were to hook up a really loud stereo in my house and just play it out the window at 90 decibels, do we have a disturbing of the police code?
Yes.
Can't we apply that code? Forget that it's vehicle, it's simply disturbing the police. If I thought that, it just.
Yeah, we've been asked that before. So to your point, yes, if you were playing music too loud, there's city ordinances about the sound of music coming from a vehicle, so we can write that from a vehicle. We also have the city noise ordinance that would prohibit any noise at a certain level being received at the next property, right? So whether it's a stereo, whether it's some type of equipment, there's different ordinances for that under a noise ordinance, right? Once we get into the vehicle and the exhaust noise, there's a state statute that's specific to a vehicle exhaust, and that's why we can't do the disorderly or the. Look, you think of something there, but. Yeah, I mean that's a whole nother topic on noise, but yeah, I mean, but there are noise ordinances to address those type of things, but that noise ordinance can't apply to a vehicle because there's a specific state statute that governs vehicles. For instance, if you were to drive from one city to another, and the reason this exists is for this reason specifically. If I was to drive through Royal Oak and my car is legal to drive through Royal Oak, and then I cross 14 Mile, it would be unfair to somebody to now say that that vehicle is illegal because Birmingham has an ordinance that says your exhaust can't be whatever level, right? And then you drive to Bloomfield Hills, and now it's illegal again because they have a separate ordinance, right? So that's why the state law governs vehicle exhaust, and it's across the state for all roadways. Because it can't be, you can't expect someone to know what every ordinance is in every city as you drive your vehicle through all these towns on your way to and from work or up north on vacation or whatever it may be. That's why it's governed by the state law, and local cities can't create ordinances for stuff like that. If that answers your question, I hope.
Want to address I would definitely say that's an MDOT question.
Yeah, that depends. Like, we try and give away roads, to communities like Auburn Road. We've been trying to give it to Rochester Hills for years because it's an unsigned trunk line. It's the old M59, and they won't take it. But, anytime we can offload a road, that meet certain criteria like that one. It's, more of a county type road, but we still have it. But anyway, Woodward, I doubt we would ever give up Woodward just because, it's a main thoroughfare. I just don't see that happening.
Can I just real quickly ask? It's very entertaining to watch. Woodward. Just help it think 45, which means 50. Maybe.
Well,
Did you work with Ferndale? Could you share a little bit about the process of the Ferndale?
are you talking about the speed limits in general or the road diet? The speed limit. So the speed limit is set. It's in cooperation between the Michigan State Police and MDOT. So whenever we have a request from a local community to do a speed study on a state trunk line in their community, we will go out and we will measure what the speed is. And if it's, we're looking for the 85th percentile speed. So 85% of the people are going a certain speed. And I always tell people when they ask, be careful what you ask for, because if it's higher than what it is, that is your new 85th. So if you want it to be lower, and, right now, probably on Woodward, like we were talking earlier, it might not go up because during peak hour or whatever, there's a lot of traffic that keeps the speeds down. But in certain areas, if it's traditionally lighter traffic, people are going 50, that would be your 50th percentile or 85th percentile. And, it could go up and not down what people want it to do. So, yeah.
Birmingham has submitted a road.
I think I'm going to ask Mayor Long just to come up to the microphone for a moment and share whatever you'd like to share about this issue and make yourself. Yeah.
Lori, take it. I mean, we've done everything you've asked and we've submitted it.
It hasn't been submitted to MDOT, my office. I haven't seen it. But I think we put that on hold because of the study, and it would be incorporated into the study. But, yeah, I have worked with your consultant and said, this is the checklist, this is all the different things we need. But then the study came along and we thought, well, it makes more sense for it to be part of the whole corridor-wide study. So I'm not sure how that will shake out in the end. But, yeah, I mean, we will review it, of course, and it will be part of the study. We've had public meetings. I'm not sure where. I don't think there is the survey. I don't think we've had a survey. We had like a charrette I was talking about earlier where it was, we had one in Pleasant Ridge There was a couple locations for them. I don't remember where, but they were trying to spread them out. And we were asking the citizens, the stakeholders, different people to come in and give their opinion on, what they're seeing at this location in Birmingham or in Royal Oak, what they would like to see. And those were over the winter.
You had one here in Birmingham?
I'm not sure where they were. I went to the one that was in Pleasant Ridge, but they had a couple locations. But I'm not sure. I'm going to get with President. Already got you moving up.
Wow.
Representative Price. Yeah, and I'm going to get her the schedule, and if there's any more. I know we were asking the communities to provide their top 2 alternatives, and what I mean alternatives is like, the lane assignments, whether we have dedicated bus lanes, where we would have bike lanes and that sort of thing. So those are the things we've asked the different communities along Woodward to provide to our study group by July.
Just this, so this is seeing MDOT, and then they
Okay.
survey. So I'm familiar with this just because I participated in one of the sessions, one of the virtual sessions that you did, just listening and learning and seeing people giving their feedback. So there is a website that's currently up. I found it by Googling MDOT Woodward Corridor Study. And it's michigan.gov/MDOT. I can't read the rest, but you'll put it, it's probably pretty long. But we can put this in our next newsletter. If we can also give it to you if you come up. But again, like MI Woodward Avenue Corridor Plan, I do see a website that's live with a link for completing the study and sharing your comments directly. So that's, again, it might not be live or they might not be taking it, but it seems to be on the website. So, and there is resources there where you can read about the process of the M1 Corridor Public Engagement Plan as well. So,
And then,
Yeah.
if you'll share the schedule of those, we can include them in our newsletter too. So we'll send that out next month for the June e-news if you sign up on the sheet over there. We are overtime, so as part of the closing, if you'd like to touch on the timeline for reintroducing, and maybe talk a little bit about what you've been doing in the legislature.
Yeah, sure. So timeline for introducing is just, again, right now I've went to another representative. He's new to the legislature. I saw that he has a proposed bill that would create a bucket, a fund where a little bit of transportation money would go and build up that could eventually be used for sound walls. And the reason he wants to do that is because he cares a lot about minimizing excessive noise from a highway in his area. Do not worry, I'm not proposing that we get a sound wall on Woodward. I made the mistake of making a joke about that at my last community conversation at the senior center, Next Senior Center, and somebody completely misunderstood and thought that I wanted to build a sound wall on Woodward. No. But what interested me because it told me that he cared about this issue, and I went and I approached him. We had a very engaged conversation. He was very enthusiastic about helping me on this. He's new, and I just, again, am making sure that he and his staff have the ability to do it well and do it right. And I don't want to hand off the second bill to him until I'm confident of that. But as soon as I am, he will be, hopefully, the rep to join me on this plan, and then we will collect co-sponsorship signatures. We will introduce it. We will request that it go to the Transportation Subcommittee, and then there will be an opportunity for people like you who care about this issue to help advocate for it. Even if you are not a constituent from a member on the House Transportation Committee, you would be welcome to reach out to them and tell them why it would be important for them to take up this bill and to vote this bill out of committee. We did get this bill voted out of committee last term. I'm hopeful that it will happen again. It's the next step. Do not start sending them emails, though, until we introduce it and request it to go to their committee, or they'll just get frustrated with me for skipping part of the process. But we'll give that update in our newsletter if and when we're ready for that advocacy. After it gets voted out of House Transportation, then we'll be doing our work to get it off the House floor. Once it does that, it will go over to the Senate. Senator McMurrow has actually pleasantly surprised me by assuring me that she thinks that with my name on it and with this other rep, that she thinks that it wouldn't have a lot of opposition in the Senate. So I'm hopeful that it could, if the Senate starts taking up any House bills, which is another big question, then it will just go through the process in the Senate, and then it would need to be signed by the governor. In that case, too, that's when we would need MDOT's at least non-opposition. So that is how MDOT plays in a little bit. They were assigned the executive's department that was following and tracking this bill. Asking them to be supportive of the bill, or more likely, departments are usually just neutral on the bill, will be the ask of me and perhaps the ask of you to try to help with advocacy to get it through the process and eventually get the governor's signature. So stay tuned, sign up for the newsletter for continued updates, and we'll let you know when and where you can help. Yep.
Thank you, Chief Grewe.
Thank you.
Lori.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you both for coming, and Mayor Long and Commissioner Baller. And for everybody for coming and spending your evening with us.
And it was recorded, so it's
Oh,
available. It will be uploaded on the Bloomfield Township website by their BCTV crew. So anybody who wasn't here and wanted to be here will be able to review the footage.
And anyone and everyone can sign up for the newsletter, whether or not you're a constituent. You're welcome to follow along and share with your friends and family.
Yeah, we won't spam you.
All right, once a month. Great. Thank you. Thank you all.